We moved to the neighborhood 30 years ago. It was a quiet, peaceful neighborhood, easy to get around, and we loved having the park right behind us. We walked our dog, and it was just a great thing. We don't have an out to get over there now because of the soccer fields. They've built a big wall up there, and you can't get down there unless you go out into the traffic to come over there to go. So we've missed out losing our park just because somebody wanted to bring something else in.
My name is Diane Garcia, and my husband and I chose Blossom Park Subdivision. Again, we've lived here about 15 years, and our house in particular is a favorite of ours because we actually back up to the greenbelt. There's no houses behind us. We get to see deer and other wildlife back there, which is wonderful. But at night, and again, I can no longer sit on my front porch and enjoy the night sky, the stars, the darkness, just the peace and quiet because of the soccer fields. I have lights glaring right in my face. And not only that, our greenbelt, the whole greenbelt is lit up now. You know, not just impacting, you know, us or me, but just, you know, the wildlife that lives back there. It's just really a shame.
I returned to Texas from Salt Lake, and back in '88, there was a day that I would sunbathe in my backyard there in Salt Lake, and when I did so, there were 27 neighbors that I could wave to, and they'd wave back, very nice people. But I figured, I'd said to myself, if I can ever get a property where I do not have 27 people looking at what I do in the backyard, that would be a good thing. And so my realtor and I shopped around for, the better part of 8 months, and I had to pay a little bit more for this property, but I chose it on purpose because it backs up to McAllister Park. Yes, we have some critters that we need to deal with, but it's been well worth it. It's peaceful, it's quiet, it was well worth the investment. And that's why I chose Blossom Park Subdivision.
Well, I've lived in San Antonio all my life. In fact, I've always been drawn to this area, even as a teenager. I don't know if anybody here would remember, but the McAllister Park actually used to be called Northeast Preserve. And so I used to come out here and go into Northeast Preserve and ride mini bikes, things like that out here. So as a child, I was always drawn to this area. I liked it out here. My first house was in a subdivision called Burning Tree, which is close to McAllister Park also. But later on, I wanted a garden home, and this is about the only area here that has garden homes, so I moved out here for that. Again, I always thought it was a good area to raise children and everything. In fact, all my children, we've always been able to ride our bikes over to McAllister Park, take advantage of the trails. My son got into mountain biking, and McAllister Park is one of the best mountain biking type of parks in San Antonio, at least it used to be. I think it probably still is. Some of those trails are probably gone now because of situations that occurred, and there's been a lot of other things that have gone on in the park that have probably cut that down. But I think the situation here with the soccer fields has really had the biggest impact to this neighborhood.
I've lived in this neighborhood for 34 years, and we moved here because first off, it was in a good neighborhood. It was a new neighborhood. It had just established a few years back, and the main thing that drew me to it was that my backyard was a green belt to McAllister Park. It had deer and wildlife in the backyard, and yet I could walk to my front yard and I was in the city. So I had the country in the backyard and the city in the front yard, and it just made it wonderful. So that's one of the reasons why I moved here.
And how has life changed for you?
Oh, it's changed drastically. Now you go in the backyard, the whole green belt's lit up. None of the deer at night come out there at all. And the noise factor is a big on the noise factor.
Well, I'll chime in a little bit on that because even though it doesn't affect me, I guess, too much, I can see where, like for you, for example, it would affect your the ability to even sell your home to a certain degree. I know with Carol and others that back up to the soccer fields, I'm sure it would impact adversely anything they want to do as far as selling their home or doing something like that.
How many nights a week?
It's no, I haven't found a pattern to it. I know they do it on some weekends, but it could be during the week.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, as a realtor, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. As a realtor, you will fill out what's called a seller's disclosure. And on that seller's disclosure it's a very handy thing to tell people about your house so they can read about when your roof is new and what you've added and what you've updated. But also on that 6 pages is supposed to be anything that might impact the desirability of the property. And noise and light pollution, if you're an honest seller, that'll have to go on there too.
Carol, you mentioned why you moved here and getting away from the 27 neighbors that are
Yes.
looking around. Did you find that here?
I did until Mr. Barrows got here. Let me tell you, the grading and the Ballinger was the name of the company. They took down the level of what was there 70 feet, am I wrong? In fact, we had to call the police and ask them to put barriers because the alleyway went straight off an unmarked cliff at one point. I have pictures. And so Mr. Barrows was a very dangerous constructor. And we had to learn to, number one, defend the trees up here on the cliff, otherwise they'd have been denuded, but also to try to stop traffic. I called 311 back in that process, and there is a gate now that crosses that has prevented, I'm sure, some fairly unpleasant things.
Were they not subject to the tree ordinance? You said they, or
Took
what kind
out-
of trees were they cutting down?
They cut anything and everything.
Oak trees,
Big trees, little
anything.
trees, and
Lots of
everything.
mosquitoes.
lots of mesquite.
Yeah.
Anything.
So
Any
the city
tree.
didn't
I have
apply the
pictures.
tree ordinance to
I have
them.
pictures, yes.
And as for what the fence that you now face, and you can't walk back there, what tell us about the
This
fence?
is the one right here by Carol. We used to walk down the road straight through to walk with our dog every day. Can't get out now. It's a straight drop off.
Yeah.
I'm surprised we haven't had problems with the children and things like that because we have got barriers. But you know, kids can get around the barrier real easy and it's straight down.
In fact, the fence has taken a beating several times. I don't know whatever happened, but you can see where it's been mangled, where something went through it.
Yeah, and,
He's
and
not
the
a
homes-
nice neighbor.
Yeah, and the homes that are along the berm here, yeah, they're dealing with some serious issues on foundation issues too. So, you know, it's impacted just negatively all the way around. And again, our home values, you know, like Carol said, we do get ready to sell our house, we have to fill out a disclosure, you know. So it's just greatly negatively impacted this whole neighborhood. Yeah.
Is you saying this from a drainage standpoint?
Well, the drop off the cliff and the drainage, like when it rains, all that water runs down that cliff and it erodes that cliff, you know, that cliff. So
Here's what I'm thinking. I've never had any foundation problems since I've lived here in 1988, but I do now. I know she does, and I know right down the line does. Don't have enough proof yet, but I'm compiling it. I think that because of the natural erosion, what they have dug away, which is the support of this
Right.
bluff,
Exactly.
we think it is impacting now our foundation.
If there is any kind of a retaining wall, it's just been dug out.
Yeah.
Is it caliche?
There's
Yeah,
no,
it's
It's just
So yeah,
caliche.
that
Yeah.
tends to,
Yeah.
no, there's no barrier to hold.
It's not
just
rocks.
gonna
Yeah, and you can
erode.
see the grooves, you know, down that cliff where,
Right.
you know, the water has drained
If it gets
down
wet,
and it's
it'll-
eroding. Yeah, it's eroding. Yeah.
melt.
Let's go back to the meetings you had in preparation, or they were supposed to be preparation for your new neighbor at the soccer field, and talk about what was discussed, what was promised to you, whether it was verbal or otherwise, and what was told to you as neighbors, and what you expected versus what you got.
Well, what was promised to all of us, we all carpooled, was 14 feet or less high for the light, all downward facing. They'd be off at, wouldn't it, 9?
9 o'clock at night.
There would be no noise, because no loudspeakers, no noise, and there would be no increase in traffic whatsoever, and it would keep all of the trees, because he thought that would be shade and attractive for his business. He didn't tell us, but someone who was there, one of his henchmen, said that each, because we asked him how much is, because none of us had, I didn't have children with soccer games. Anyway, he at that time he's charged $1,200 per kid per year, and that was his profit from doing that. Was his reason for doing that, and that was what he was going to use to keep all the trees and the upkeep and all that. And there are only going to be just a few soccer fields. There might be more, but he didn't think so. Well, now I think I don't know how many soccer fields there are now.
Yeah, he's
but-
really developed that area. There's now a metal building down there right at Starcrest, and I'm assuming it's concession bathrooms. We really don't know. It could be storage.
It's ugly.
And they've added more lights back there than what were there before. I mean, they just keep on every little
taking
inch.
trees. So
Yeah.
any softening effect to be a good neighbor is not on his agenda. Don't vote for him, please.
And as far as the land is still owned by the city, he leases it?
We're assuming that is still a $1 a year lease. There was something about 10 years. It was 10 years.
They said 30 years. I don't know that. That I don't know.
Yeah, he's there forever.
They couldn't have sold the parkland without going through a whole legal process, so.
No, we understand it was a lease, $1 a
Yeah.
year. It seems like he said 10 years. I wish I'd have kept those notes.
Should be available at the city somewhere. You probably could ask for an open records. Go to your current councilman and ask him to get that for you.
Our current councilman,
Joe Cryer?
yeah.
So let's talk about that. What is since the meetings happened, you're promised one thing, reality occurred, and it's impacted your quality of life.
Yeah.
Have you had any discussions with the District 9 office and the current councilman?
I think we've pretty well waited because we think that Mr. Cryer is probably not motivated. I'm not saying anything in disparagatory. I'm just simply saying that he's probably not motivated. We thought we would wait and talk with our newly elected representative. And that's why we are here today talking to anyone and everyone. This is why we've gotten on nextdoor.com to chat with people in this neighborhood and all of those neighbors that also join in that effort to tell them what we know. We want our message to get out. That would be a very poor choice.
And as far as going forward here, what would y'all like to see happen?
We would like to have you win. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Thank you. But as far as your relationship with the Classic Elite, Marco Barros, and that your neighbor, the commercial side of that, what would you like to see happen to make amends, to make reparations?
Well, for him to go back and keep the promises he made to us in the first place.
Remove the building.
Yeah.
Address the lighting.
Yes.
And then
Unpave
they need
the
to
parking
make
lots.
Sure that they need to make sure that they're through at a particular time.
Yeah. at
Replace
9 o'clock.
every tree.
And then they need to keep the noise down, the noise back.
That's your biggest, the
Yeah,
noise and the lights.
Noise,
Noise and the lights,
noise. I
big
can
time.
hear them sitting. I can be on my couch in my house watching something, and some nights I can hear those coaches or the fans
Exactly,
or whatever
yeah.
screaming through the windows.
Exactly.
You go, whoa,
Yeah,
okay,
I-
they're
yeah.
at it again.
I can sit in my house at 10:30 at night and hear all the screaming and the yelling.
Trees and soccer fields don't go
You
together.
know.
No, they
And
don't.
if you're expanding soccer fields, you have to wipe out all the trees.
Well, I think one of the
Exactly.
things that needs to be done too is some kind of engineering study along here to see if this cliff here is eroding, and put some kind of retaining wall in there, or at his expense.
At
It is
Okay.
expense, exactly.
I really
Yeah.
wouldn't want to see the city having to
And it shouldn't.
contribute to anything that has been done by Mr. Barros.
Exactly.
So, and if that engineering study should probably include any effects that have occurred foundation-wise for a lot of these homes that back up to this soccer field.
Has anybody had an engineer look at their houses, address any of these issues
Not
at all?
yet. What I had hoped to do is get a little bit more compiling information together, and because there's more than just a few of us who are involved on this block. There's all of us. But we need more research done. What I'd like to do is to see that he would lose his lease. And
Just
then
go
we'll
it all
let
together.
nature take its course.
Exactly.
And he can take his building with him. And we're wondering where he gets his water. That's a lot of grass to water.
Probably recycled.
I don't know.
The city provides that gray water to golf courses, soccer fields, and so if you see any purple pipes out there or purple extensions, it's probably from that.
So what do y'all, I noticed when I drove in the neighborhood today, there's a sign about Proposition 2 with the upcoming elections. Right now we're in early voting. May Saturday is the election day, and voters will be voting on 6 different propositions on the bond. Proposition 2 deals with drainage. So how do y'all expect that to help your neighborhood?
Our president, Marilyn Daddy, who's not here today, she's an election judge, so she's not here today, led us to go to the bond meetings held by the city at the downtown library. We went 3 times.
We had the engineers out here at least 2 or 3 times to assess the drainage that we have, the drainage problems that we have within our subdivision. And so we were
We've had a couple of
fortunate
homes
enough.
that actually flood out.
Yeah.
So that's why, Proposition 2 is drainage and flood, and I'm emphasizing the flood on the signage because we do have a couple of residents here that I imagine years ago didn't flood, but because of construction from the Time Warner and Spectrum now, and it obviously wasn't done right as far as the drainage is concerned, and we have a couple of homes that now, if any heavy rains that we have, certainly do flood out at this point, have done so in the past.
Blossom Park subdivision is mentioned by name in that.
Yeah, we have.
Yes.
Is there a cause for that? Is there a reason that y'all are in the bond package and mentioned by name?
Yes.
Yes.
Would you share that?
Well, it's for that flood.
Yeah,
For
that
those
it's for
residents.
the drainage and
Okay.
flood, and, we have a creek or whatever that runs through the neighborhood, and it does back up, when we do get heavy rains and things like that.
Is that been impacted by the soccer complex, or is it strictly on the other side of the neighborhood?
Strictly on the other side of the neighborhood that we know of. But it is specifically mentioned in Proposition 2. That's why Clint and Jack have made signs with the rest of our neighborhood. And then we've also put little notices as we can on nextdoor.com to make sure that our neighbors to the north of us, the Arbor and North Central subdivisions, know about, because it's their runoff. It's not their fault, but it's their runoff that is causing all of this. We were built first, they were built after that. And so it's important that we get that moving through this neighborhood, dig out to do some more engineering, and the funds be spent to Blossom Park subdivision so that we can get it going south from here into, I guess, the Salada Creek. In fact, that's why the dry dam is in back of us, if you're familiar with the topography of our area.
What else has happened in the neighborhood? You spoke of crime. Is there anything in detail that's important for people to know about the crime factor since the soccer complex has been
Well,
built?
crime has increased, and it's been, maybe a month or 2 ago. I was getting ready to go to bed when I was about 11 o'clock at night. I heard this loud pow, and I didn't know what it was. I thought maybe something had fallen over in the garage. And so anyway, I was just looking through all the rooms in the house, and I checked the front bedroom. Didn't see anything, and then I went back in there again, and I noticed the curtain that goes over the window was draped over a chair that was sitting there. Well, I walked up, there was glass on the ground, and somebody had thrown a big old rock that was in my yard. They used a rock out of my yard and chunked it through my window. I did call the police. It was not random. There were several neighbors that got hit that same night. I talked to the police officer, and he said it's just the mischievous type stuff, just the mischievous crime. It cost me $140 to replace one bottom window pane. 11 o'clock at night, and I had a neighbor come over and put plywood on my window, till I could call somebody to fix it the next morning. And there was a house up the street on Budding, just right
Right
there
down the street from me, and they had a rock thrown through the window, and they also had either BB or pellet
I
shots
saw that,
to
and
some of the windows.
it's just a shame. We've never heard of. There's been nothing like that going on. This neighborhood's been very quiet, very, very quiet. Yeah.
We mentioned that nextdoor.com, that app that we get on very frequently, and it does have the capability of people communicating what types of crimes have occurred to their residences. So much to the degree, of course, I'm kind of a do-it-yourselfer anyway, but I've installed a security camera system in my home. And
Yeah.
if you'd asked me, 5, 6 years ago, would I need something like that? I would have said
Exactly.
no.
Right.
But I've had it now for 3 years, and I hope I never have to use it. It never comes into play. Luckily, it hasn't. But again, it's the feeling. It's you don't have the security feeling that we had when we
Right.
originally moved here.
Exactly.
And maybe it's because we're a little more. There's a little more communication. We know what's going on a little bit more around in the neighborhood. But the impact to me personally was that I've installed security cameras.
So crime and vandalism has increased throughout the city. You think it's just the way things are going, or do you think it has a relationship to anything around you?
It's interesting, on Sunday morning, I'm on the way to church, and there's just a steady line of, I guess, parents and their soccer kids coming down Jones Mosser. They'll cut right through Budding, get to the line here. Why? I don't know. It's Sunday morning. There's not much traffic. They will go down Starcrest. There's no turning, so they go all the way down and make an illegal U-turn. And if you're not watching what you're doing when they're coming, and more particularly when they are headed home, they are not prudent in their driving habits.
Well, what also happens if they're coming the other way, off of Wurzbach Parkway, if they, for whatever reason, go past the entrance, they'll come up here, come into our subdivision, and turn around, and then go back.
Yeah.
So I've been up here. I take care of the islands up here. I've been up here, maybe not Sunday mornings, but several times I've been up there. And the first time I noticed, I said, "What in the world's going on?" Because all these cars are coming in, they're turning around, and of course it's not like they pull into a resident or a business there or anything to do it. They come in, they do a U-turn basically. But of course you can't do a complete U-turn depending on your vehicle. You got to kind of make it and then back up and then come around. And of course then the light down here has not been working very well. It stays so. Now we have all these people coming in, and they can't really do the turn anymore. It jams everything up.
Yeah, we have a
So
lot more
it's-
traffic through the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Was there a traffic study completed before the project was
Oh,
in place?
I doubt it. Yeah.
Has there been one since then?
I put in a complaint with District 9, and one of his staff has called me, and they were trying to get it worked out, but at this point, I don't believe we can take care of it. You're still set at that light.
At the line?
Yeah. The reason what happened was when they were building Wurzbach Parkway, Starcrest was the main thoroughfare to get on to Bidders and so forth. So we had a lot of traffic out here. So they put the street light in, and since Wurzbach Parkway has been completed, Starcrest gets minimal traffic now. But yet you still have to sit at that light for a minute or whatever, and you just sit there. And I myself, sometimes if I know that the light's just turned and I'm going to have to sit there for a minute or whatever or two, I will take a right, go down about a half a block, make a U-turn, and then come back through, and I still see the people sitting there waiting for the light. So, yeah, something needs to be done so that we can get out of the subdivision. There's really no reason why we have to sit there and there's no cars coming either way, and you just have to still sit there.
And
Wait,
it's impacted
wait.
worse when they're having soccer games.
Yeah. And then
Well, I've
get
seen
more
it.
traffic.
I mean, again, I don't live right down this area, so it doesn't. I don't observe it every day or every time they have a soccer match. But I do know that they blow past that entrance, and there isn't any place else to go. You come the first right after that entrance, the next entrance where you can turn around is coming into our subdivision. So I sat there one day watching, and I said, "What in the world's all this traffic coming from here? Where are they?" And then it dawned on me it was the soccer field. It was soccer traffic. Yeah.
In block walking your neighborhood, I met a middle-aged woman, young woman who she's just coming home from work. She works for a homeowner association, I think on the south side. But she came home, and I was talking to her husband. He was cutting down a tree in his front yard that had fallen over, and he was taking care of it just over on the next street over here. And she got home, and she said she runs in that light every day going to work. She said about 8 minutes, she had said. And she was on the phone with TCI and 311 and TCI and trying to get it fixed, and they had fixed it temporarily. Is it
as far as I know, I haven't tried it today, but
Yeah.
it has been fixed.
Patrick, we've been giving an information stream to you. It's been one way. Now, you're elected, and how are you going to help Blossom Park Subdivision.
Yeah, exactly. Resolve some of these
Deal
issues. Yeah.
with Mr. Barros.
Well, thanks for putting me on the spot.
Are you getting this, Harry?
Well, if fortunate enough to be able to serve District 9 in that capacity would be an honor. And part of that is learning. I have to go learn all the information. When I need to go back in that capacity, I won't have to get open records request or Freedom of Information Act. I can actually access that through the staff and what actually transpired. The lease, all the communications that were going back and forth between Mr. Barros and District 9 and the city, and be able to figure out what exactly was awarded, and then also what was expected. Whether there was whether it was a situation where there was a bidding process, or it was a deal that he was given the project under specific terms. So part of that's learning about that, just as we're sitting here today, and why I haven't really talked is, I need to learn the situation more and make sure I have a complete understanding of it before I can go forward. But to me, we need to make sure that reparation is made for the neighborhood, and that the commitments that have been promised to y'all should be fulfilled. And I agree with the issue on the cliff. You need to have an engineer out here quickly, and because we've had other subdivisions throughout the city that homes have been dramatically impacted by erosion and in a similar situation. And so we need to make sure your homes are stabilized and from a foundation standpoint. I don't know all the things that we can do, but I can say from a standpoint of seeking justice is first and foremost for y'all the promises to be fulfilled by whoever's occupying that land, and the person that is has the lease and has the business, they need to pay for it, not the taxpayers of District 9, not the taxpayers of San Antonio, but the person running the business. The person running the business who's profiting from this is the person who needs to fulfill the commitments and restore the land as it was, as promised and committed to. But,
I've noticed in the last 10 years, we started out, we had one bar, then we have 2 bars. And I think not that specifically, but I can see that on all of the streets that surround us, our perimeters, the zoning, and I think this has given people like Boris the nerve and the righteousness really to kind of treat this subdivision as second-class citizens. It really is true.
Yeah, I'd say it's false righteousness in that capacity, that are feeling that possibly above the zoning issues, and I've had a history over the last 6 years of fighting for neighborhoods, residential developments, and protecting them from irresponsible growth. We want business development, we want growth in the city, but we want it to be responsible, always protecting the residential neighborhoods. And y'all were here first, you should be protected, and any development that comes as a result should be make sure they cater to you to make sure that your quality of life is not impacted adversely, and I'm sorry it happened to y'all. But
Well, part of your homework, it just now occurred to me, we talked about Barros leasing this property from, I would assume, the parks, city parks. It'd be interesting to know, because Carol touched on, and I don't know financially how much they charge for the clubs to come and participate or use the fields. But if he's getting, I may be very much off, but he's getting that for $1 a month, or a year, whatever it is, whatever that, and he's making, that's a lucrative situation. When you're getting land, yeah, you can come out here, and the more soccer fields you have, the more people, like kids you can have, and I don't begrudge any kids coming. I love the fact that we have the ability to provide facilities like that for our children, but that needs to be done in a more responsible manner. And if Barros can make a lease that is very lucrative, he's just going to keep on doing it, and people like him are going to keep on doing it. If they can go to the city and get cheap land and put a little bit of money into it, maybe a lot of money into it to develop it, and but make a huge profit off of it, I'd jump on the bandwagon too.
That's right.
But so that might be part of your homework is, what is this deal? You know, is the city getting messed over on this situation? You know, were they aware of the fact? What was the profit? What is it? And I think Jack mentioned that maybe at first maybe it was supposed to be a nonprofit situation. So was it done under false pretenses? You know, so that's again part of the, you know, what were the conditions under which he was able to obtain the land, and what are the lease agreements? And maybe that needs to be renegotiated. If you can't get him out, let's not make it quite as lucrative for him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, certainly use those lucrative profits, even the revenue that's come to the nonprofit, if that's the case, to fix the situation and fulfill his commitments to y'all in the neighborhood.
Right.
Mayor Ivy Taylor was very nice to help us with the drainage problem. She listened to us and I think helped us a lot.
Yeah, particularly in regards to the bond package, or
On the, yes,
on
the bond package.
Proposition 2?
Yes. She
Okay.
came out and we took our thing to her and she worked with us.
So of all the bond propositions, number 2, drainage and flooding.
That's
is
why
crucial.
we wanted
That's
to
crucial to
vote
Boston
on it,
Park
yes.
subdivision. Okay.
That's why we're,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Well, something else I'd like you to be aware of is a transparency issue. Not too long ago, there's a Little League organization called Capital Little League. They're right over here off of Nacogdoches. They're part of they were right next to the Capital Cement Company over here, and I would imagine Capital Cement sponsored them. Well, Capital Cement now is expanding over into what was their baseball fields. And I don't know how it happened, whatever, but they almost slid in being able to build or move from that location, which was being done away with, into McAllister Park. And I also heard, and don't quote me on this, but I also heard that the city was going to actually fund part of that move.
They were
And-
initially.
Yeah, and it was like that was just kind of slid in. And if the friends of McAllister Park and residents in this area hadn't been made aware of it, to my knowledge, a very last minute type thing, we could have woken up one morning and there would have been Little League fields going in and, you know, trees being knocked down, because there's a lot of soccer fields, a lot of baseball fields over there now. And one of the things that a lot of the people in this area are very wary of is Proposition 3, which is providing a lot of money to parks and recreation. And but I guess again, getting back to the transparency part, how is it that was able to occur through city council? Somebody, somebody in the Capital Cement organization or whatever, how were they able to get this through without any of the residents, any of the people that actually use this park? You know, because what we don't want to have happen is these nature preserves become sports parks.
That's it.
And
Exactly.
and so that's another thing that I wanted you to be aware of, that not only is it happening in McAllister Park, but I understand that it's happening in other parks as well. So let's make sure that these nature preserves, these green belts and everything, stay green belts.
Exactly.
And don't become soccer fields. And again, I don't begrudge. I think it's great for kids to be involved in athletics, but you know, as a result of what they're doing now, I don't know if it's Capital or somebody. I think it's one of the builders here. I'm sorry, it skips my mind. They're actually going to fund them. They're going to spend like $8 million to find them a place to relocate and put in their baseball fields. So it can be done. It doesn't have to be shoved in under the rug, whatever you call it, some kind of sweet deal, whatever you want to call it. And taxpayers might wind up paying for it, taking over parkland that was originally supposed to be for nature and for trails and things like that. So again, beware of that as well.
And provide a buffer for housing subdivisions.
Yes.
Well, and by the way, all of McAllister Park, even down here, the soccer fields, this is all in that floodplain, the Mud Creek floodplain. And any kind of rain at all, they shut the park down. They say they should, because it's very dangerous. That's why I marvel why they would,
Well,
who in their right mind.
because the land can't be used for anything. I mean, look at Alms Park. Alms Park, that's all the athletic fields and stuff like that, but it floods out every time we have. I mean, that's why they have the dam there and everything. So that's a good reason for it. But again, if this land was donated to be more of a green belt or a buffer for nature trails, for walking your dog, for whatever, I know there's a lot of land there. I know, but at a certain point, you're going to start having more sports park type of facilities than you are having nature types of
I'd be
facilities.
curious to know how many soccer fields there are available in northern Bexar County, or in 9, in District 9. I'll bet compared to other districts in the city, it's disproportionately heavy.
I don't know the answer to that. It's a good question.
Yeah. I think it's time, because there are other people, the Friends of McAllister Park, as Clint said, there are more people than kids that use that park. There are adult runners, there's kite, my lord, the kite people are crazy.
Bicycles.
The dog people are, anyway, there are all kinds of other people that use that park. Families, we're very proud of that. In fact, one of the stipulations I had when we were looking at what kind of gate, the city was asking me finally what kind of gate we wanted. I said, one, that there has to be a way for people the people who walk and with their families and their dogs all back in there, feed the deer, whatever. There needs to be that considered, and they did.
Were there other concessions like that made to y'all?
That was it.
Was it just
Wait a minute, there were 2. That was the one when I finally put my foot down, and the second one was trying to replace, I'm sorry, I have a cat that used to be in the show ring, and he can only take being anonymous so often. I apologize to the videographer. But they gave us 27 trees. They had to plant them with jackhammers. My 86-year-old neighbor and I watered them for 2 years. And I think we've kept about half of them alive. That was now through the drought of, was it in 09, 10, the drought? There are hoses strung everywhere out there to this day, where she and I dragged hoses to keep them alive, trying to keep that cliff in one piece. Those were the concessions that the city made.
the trees, not for the maintenance?
No, gosh, no.
No.
And we tried to plant trees ourselves, but we gave up. And then when we saw the strong men with their jackhammer, she and I had to have a pretty good laugh about that because we were out there with teaspoons. Anyway, but we were able to keep some of those through drought and dragging at 6 o'clock in the morning when it was cool. Otherwise, it would be 100 by noon. We did that for 3 years.
Well, I appreciate y'all sharing. It's, I know it's impacted your quality of life, and which is the reason we wanted to bring this to you. One of my campaign commitments is to help improve people's quality of life, and you can certainly have my commitment on that with your neighborhood and every other neighborhood in District 9. That we want growth, but it needs to be responsible growth.
Exactly.
Always take into account the residential neighborhoods and protecting them, and make sure that anything you agree to is fulfilled. And so we need to make sure that that's still fulfilled, even though that has already happened. And what year did the soccer, were the first soccer matches?
Well, they dug it for almost 2 years. So the first, I can date it by my hip replacement, because I was out there dragging hoses with hip replacement. The doctor was freaking. So that was 2012. So it was 2013 would be the very first, and 2014 would be the very first that I recall.
So approximately 3 years time of revenue into,
Wasn't it about that?
so about 3 years of revenue now, and with still no performance on commitments.
At 1,200, now I bet it's more than that now, but that's what he told us then, one of his workers told us then. I wonder what he's charging now, and I wonder how many kids.
He's had to expand the parking and everything because of this. He doesn't have any place else to go, I guess, at this point. I mean, he's kind of the cliff on one side, and I guess,
The
it's down some
drainage,
park,
you got
the
the
drainage,
creek-
yeah, so
creek
you
on
can't
the
go
other
that
side.
way. But now, I can't say that I don't know how many soccer fields are there right now, 20? I don't know. But
Spent a lot of
he
money.
didn't, but he didn't start off with 20. I mean, he started off with like 2 or 3 or something like that. So but he's been expanding. And that's the whole thing. It's been a gradual situation.
Yeah, exactly.
And so as he came up to that cliff, that's when I have to expand my soccer fields. I got to put some more in there. Well, I take out some of this cliff here. knock it back a little bit and haul off the dirt or whatever and get my fields in there and make a little more money. So yeah, to begin with, he probably didn't make a lot, or considering what he's making now, if you want to, I would say as a comparison. But I'm sure I see that place is just packed out, and he's got to be making a lot of money.
Well, I know he's got Theo's Classic Elite Leash. I see the sign over there off East Bidders, over there on the other side of Blossom Park Athletic Center. There are soccer fields over there. That's his sign. So it's not just hair. I've got a,
On bidders, oh, yeah.
I've got a feeling he's been, he's not, I mean, this, okay, so.
Well, is there a place we can go look at the?
Yeah, I'd love to
Yeah,
see
you can
what.
walk
Oh,
straight
yeah,
out
you
there.
walk right out here.
Yeah, I've never.
I'll tell you what, you can walk so far and you take another step and you.
Right on down.
Harry, can you carry the camera out there and so we can show?
Put your